story is told about Clark Gable, who at the time was possibly the most recognizable man on the planet, and William Faulkner, who is the greatest writer of his generation, said that they had a mutual friend and they went hunting together one time. And as they got out there, they kind of talked a little bit and kind of made their acquaintances. And Clark Gable looked at William Faulkner and said, "So, Mr. Faulkner, you right?" And not to be held in check, Mr. Faulkner looked at him and said, "Yes, I do, Mr. Gable. And what is it that you do?" So the whole idea was he was going to look at it and see, hey, you know what? You may come across in a way where you act like you've never heard of me as a writer, but I'm definitely going to come back and say, hey, you may be the most recognizable man on the planet, but I'm not going to let you get by with insulting me like that. And that's kind of the way we are a lot of times when it comes to pride, right? This morning we're going to look at a lesson in this series, Overcoming Social Sins, and the title I gave it is, I Am the Standard. You know, pride. A lot of times that's the way it is, right? However I do things, the kind of mindset that I maintain, the life that I live, the way I run my life is the standard that you should live by. We're going to go to a familiar passage this morning in Luke chapter 18, and I ask you if you will to stay with me there. We're going to go through that, and we're going to pull out 3 points that I want us to look at and be able to gather from in this story. In verse 9 in Luke, then Jesus told this story to some who had great confidence in their own righteousness and scorned everyone else. 2 men went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, and the other was a despised tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed this prayer: I thank you, God, that I am not like other people, cheaters, sinners, adulterers. I'm certainly not like that tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I give 1/10 of my income. But the tax collector stood at a distance and dared not even lift his eyes to heaven as he prayed. Instead, he beat his chest in sorrow, saying, Oh God, be merciful to me, for I am a sinner. I tell you, this sinner, not the Pharisee, returned home justified before God. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. We started this a few weeks ago. We got a card of Bibles, so if you need a Bible, if you will, just raise your hand, and Kelvin will come and bring one to you. If you just lift it up, because I want everybody to be in the Word this morning, and make sure that we get this story. Just keep them high, and Kelvin will hand that out to you. But I want us to notice right out of the gate this morning in Luke chapter 18 that there are only 2 positions here. We see that there are only 2 choices really that you can be in within this story. One of the Pharisee and one of the tax collector. And as we go into this story today, as we bring this story to life in 2017, I want to ask you to kind of put yourself in a position, in one of the 2 positions. Are you the tax collector or are you the Pharisee as we go through this today? 3 things I want us to notice. The first being moral self-righteousness. Now, we see this idea of moral self-righteousness in Luke 18 as the Pharisee expresses himself as morally superior to the tax collector. We see in verse 11 it says that I am not like other people. I'm certainly not like that tax collector. Have you ever put yourself above someone else when it comes to moral superiority? I have. I remember specifically, the last job I had before I got into ministry, I worked in a men's clothing store, and if I ever got away from God and started living a terrible life and died in a state away from God and went to hell, I would expect to see one of these clothing stores in hell, because it was a terrible, terrible place to live. I hated that place. Or not live, but work. But anyway, I was there, and there were some pretty attractive girls that worked there. And I remember in particular, there was this one girl, and she had told some of the other girls there she would like to go out with me, and I was just like, man, I kind of knew her a little bit, kind of knew her reputation, and I told the other girl, I was like, well, I really don't want to go out with her because I just don't think we have the same morals. And the girl kind of told her, and then she got back to me and she said, well, I heard you don't want to go out with me because I don't have morals. And I said, no, I didn't say you don't have morals. I just said we had different morals. And the thing for me is, I remember that story specifically, and it's not something that I'm very proud of, because I remember just thinking at that point in my life that there are people that I was kind of superior to. Have you ever maintained that mindset? I mean, I look back on life and I really think about how I wish I had gone through my early years, my high school years, maybe my first couple of college years, as one who was a true believer in Jesus, as one who understood grace, as opposed to going through life in those years as one who was a Pharisee, as one who put myself up here a little bit above you. I am a little bit better than you, and I know that because that's kind of the way I was taught growing up. I didn't understand grace at that point. I didn't understand how much that means to me. We're going to get into that a little bit here in just a few moments. But as we start out this morning, I want you to think about how many people you judge. How many times do you put yourself up here as morally superior to another? Because I think this is vitally important if we're going to overcome this social sin of pride, of elevating ourselves and putting ourselves above others. Moral self-righteousness is certainly an easy sin for us to fall into today in the world that we're living in as, I guess, conservative evangelicals. And the reason that that's the case is because you look around and you see the state of morality in the world that we're living in today. And a lot of times you're like, man, you know what? It's a tough world we're living in. You look at all the people, there are very few morals, there are very few people doing what they ought to be doing. And because of the fact that that's the case, and we see that in our society a lot, it's very easy for us to elevate ourselves. But I'm saying to us this morning, church, we got to understand how unattractive that is to God, first of all, but how unattractive it is to the world. Because the reality is, one of the things I love about our church here, I don't care who comes in these doors, I feel like we love them. I don't care if they're rich or poor, I don't care what color they are, I don't care if they have a job or don't have a job. I think we do a really good job of surrounding people and loving them and letting them know that this is truly God's body. And anyone can be a part of it. We are all saved by the grace of God. But what I've got to help us understand, help myself understand, is in our individual lives, we've got to make sure that that's the message that we're sending to other people. That we aren't saying, hey, I go to church, hey, I'm in a relationship with Jesus, I am a little bit better than you. What we've got to understand is that we are all saved by the grace of God. But since it's easy for us to fall into this sin, let's notice what the passage in Luke chapter 18 says here. Verse 9. Then Jesus told this story to some who had what? Who had great confidence in their own righteousness. In other words, it's saying, hey, these people think that they are the ones who have produced their own righteousness. They've almost become their own God. Hey, I am where I am, not because of God and His goodness and all that He does in my life. I am where I am because I am super disciplined, because of my own self-righteousness. I made myself righteous. And folks, that is just wrong. I mean, there's no other word for it. That is wrong. We cannot live a life like that. I want to give you a couple of things to combat moral self-righteousness. A couple of things I just want you to think about, maybe jot down. Instead of saying, hey, this is what I've accomplished, maintain the mindset that says, through God's grace, I am whatever it is that you are. Instead of me doing it, it's through God's grace that I become what I am. Second thing is, place yourself as a part of the problem. Place yourself among the sinners. Now think on this for just a moment. You know, the Word tells us very clearly that we all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But I also notice a passage that we see it on a lot of yard signs, especially during election time. 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14. Then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sins and I will restore their land. Now, two key phrases in this passage that I want us to notice as we're talking about this idea of including ourselves among those who are sinners, among those who are a part of the issue that we identify as sinful or wrong. First of all, God says in this, if my people, that's us, right? That's the people He was writing to then. That's who we're relating this to today. If they will do what? Turn from their wicked ways. So if you will put yourself in the middle of the problem and say, hey, this is not them, this is us, it will help us to see the greater need here. You say, well, how are we a part of the problem? How are we responsible for sin? Well, as Christians, we have these things that we really get on. And once again, I go back to politics a lot of times. You bring up the idea of abortion. And man, I'm 100% opposed to abortion. I'm not for it any way whatsoever. However, I will say this. I'm going to love with all my heart those people who've had an abortion. Because that choice that they made is no worse than a whole lot of the choices I've made in my life. So that's going to be my position on it. But I am 100% for allowing that child. I do believe conception starts the life, the human life. And I believe that process, when it starts, I believe that person has a soul at that point. So I want to get all that on the table. But here's what I want us to think about, and here's what I want us to really consider as being a part of the problem. We get on that as Christians about how we shouldn't have abortion as an option in this nation. But right now in Floyd County, Georgia, there are 400 children who need to be adopted. We believe very strongly that a man and a woman should be married, that they shouldn't live together. And we'll get on that. We'll talk about that. They're just shacking up. They shouldn't be doing that. They should be married. But how many of us are doing the best job that we can to set an example in the way that we carry out our marriage to make marriage look appealing to those who are not in a relationship? See, the fact of the matter is, if it's always, the yang back and forth, and it's just a constant mess, and you don't get along, and you don't submit to each other, and you have that pride, and you poke out your chest, and you call each other out, and you give each other a hard time, and your children see that, and your nephew sees it, and your unmarried uncle over here sees it, then why in the world would they want to join into something like that? Why wouldn't they just want to keep on living with their boyfriend or girlfriend and say, hey, you know what? If this thing gets rough, guess what? I can get out. But if I get into a marriage, I'm stuck. I'm stuck in something that looks a whole lot like you. So see where I'm going with this? Once again, I'm not trying to say that I am in favor of people living together. I'm 100% opposed to abortion, if in case that was not clear. But what I'm trying to help us understand is the mindset that we got to maintain. The tax collector in verse 13 says this, but the tax collector stood at a distance, beat his chest in sorrow, saying, "Oh God, be merciful for me, for I am a sinner." Instead of going into life pointing out the problems of everyone else, let's put ourselves in there as part of the problem and see what we can do to make it better. Second thing I want us to notice, the pride of correct doctrine. You go back and look at verse 11, you say, the Pharisee stood by himself and prayed this prayer, "I thank you, God, that I'm not like these other people, the cheaters, the sinners, the adulterers. I'm certainly not like that tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I give you a tenth of my income." The Pharisee had it all right. Are you doing everything right? I want us to go through a little list here. I want to ask you how you're doing on this. So just kind of write it down if you want to and check these off. All right, so we're going to start off with these ones right here. How are you doing when it comes to following the commands of the New Testament? How about taking the Lord's Supper every Sunday? Some would say that's a command, some would say it's an example, but all right, you've already done that one. Check. How about attending church, gathering with the people? You're here, check. Praying, teaching and preaching, giving, singing. Check, 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 check. We're good, right? Everybody good so far? How about this one? Bearing fruit in keeping with repentance. I'm going to give you about 10 right here. Therefore, if you are presenting your offering at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, Leave your offering there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and present your offering. Next, everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Do not resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. Give to him who asks of you. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Whenever you fast, do not put on a gloomy face as the hypocrites do. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. How you doing? When it comes to obeying the commands of the New Testament. Let me just say this real quick. That's only 10 out of 105 that are only found in the book of Matthew. Do you need us to go a little bit further before we find one where you're really struggling? Anyone still in, doing it perfectly? I tapped out after number 1. I'm just going to be honest. If we go back and look at that. Because I am not bearing fruits worthy of repentance in every aspect of my life. So, that's where we are. That's where we find ourselves. You're talking about this idea of having the correct doctrine, of doing things the right way, and don't get me wrong, I think we have to try to do everything we can from a biblical standpoint. But what I'm trying to help us understand this morning is that you're going to get in the Word, I'm going to get in the Word, and some of us are going to arrive at 2 different places. And here's the deal, if I go through my life, and I get all those things wrong, and I'm relying on myself to create self-righteousness, then I am toast. Because I'm not getting even the 10 of 105 that we just mentioned here this morning. I can't create that on my own, using my own self-righteousness. So what's the point, right? Because if I can't do it on my own, why bother? Why bother? Because of Jesus and because of His grace. I can't do it on my own, therefore I need Him. And here's what I want us to understand. Because some of us get pretty arrogant when it comes to this particular area right here. We need to fully understand why we need Jesus, why we need grace. Because if grace is going to cover me in the areas where I'm not doing everything that I should, or I don't have a correct understanding, then what I've got to understand as well, and how I treat my friend who disagrees with me, is that if grace is going to cover me, grace is going to cover them as well. So how can I avoid judging those we disagree with? My number 1 rule is this, for me personally. I'm going to start judging you. I'm going to start judging the people down the street who do things a little bit differently than the way that I do them. I'm going to start doing that when I get everything in my life to where it needs to be. Which tells you what? I'm probably never going to do that. Because I got enough that needs to be swept off my front porch to not worry a whole lot about others. So I'm saying this to us this morning because I think this is vitally important to our walk and where we are, because I think a lot of people in church spend a whole lot of time worrying about other people and what they're doing or what they're not doing, as opposed to just saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to do what I can the way that God has blessed me to do it, and I'm going to do the best job that I can and not worry about anyone else. But here's the real advice I want to give you. Aside from me just not really taking issue with anyone else until I get my own doorstep swept, Paul gives us some wonderful advice on how we can avoid judging those we disagree with. He's speaking to the Corinthians about the food that's offered to idols, and there was this big debate. If this has been offered to an idol, can we eat the food? So, in other words, is it tainted because it's been offered to an idol? And this is what he says in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 1. Now, regarding your question about food that has been offered to idols, yes, we know that we have all knowledge about this issue. But while knowledge makes us feel important, it is love that strengthens the church. So he's saying to them what? Go out and pound these people who are doing something that's different from you? No, he says, hey, go out and love them. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I can hammer you all day long, or you can hammer me, or we can hammer someone else with the knowledge that we have. The Word tells us about knowledge puffing up, us becoming puffed up, arrogant. Hey, I know how to do this, you don't. So I'm going to really let you have it because you don't have the knowledge. You're not doing the things that you ought to be doing. We can do that. We can beat others up, or we can nurture them and love them while building a relationship. As I said just a moment ago, and I'll repeat it again, we're looking at this whole idea, and we're thinking about this second point, pride of correct doctrine. I believe I've got to do the best I can to understand God's Word. Most of the people that I know who are following Jesus, in my life, I don't ever recall anyone just coming up and saying, hey, you know what? I'm just really trying to do everything I can to pervert God's Word. I want to lead a bunch of people to hell. I want to go to hell, so I'm not going to do what God has really told me to do. I've never had anybody tell me that. But I've talked to a ton of people who have a different understanding of things than I do. And here's what I've got to understand. If I'm not getting it all right, and they're not getting it all right, thank God for His grace. Amen? Final thing I want us to look at, and this is where it all comes to a head for me anyway, an independent spirit. See, I can do a lot of these things independent from God because that's just the way I've been taught. Hey, go out and you make this thing happen for yourself. You make your own life. You do the thing that you want to do, and you create your own situation. Then I come into a relationship with Jesus, and all of a sudden, I've got to be dependent on Him. Verse 14 says, I tell you, the sinner, not the Pharisee, returned home justified before God. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. The whole idea of an independent spirit is that you are one who is submitting to God, not one who's trying to do it on your own. You are humbling yourself before God. We must be humble. We must be teachable. The Pharisees then, and the ones that we live with now, had it all figured out. They didn't need to be taught. But I want to consider these passages from Proverbs 3:1, 4:1, and 5:1. My child, never forget the things I have taught you. Store my commands in your heart. 4:1. My children, listen when your father corrects you. Pay attention and learn good judgment. 5:1. My son, pay attention to my wisdom. Listen carefully to my wise counsel. What's it telling us to do? It's telling us to get into this every day. Allow our Father to direct us. Allow the Word to help you understand what you need to become. Do you have a willingness to learn? To admit that you don't have it all figured out? Do you have a willingness to learn from someone who is not like you? Someone who maybe doesn't necessarily believe the way that you do? I told you before, in 9 years of youth ministry, man, I learned a lot from teenagers who were 8, 10, 12 years younger than me. Would you learn from someone that's younger than you? Will you learn from someone who is older than you? Will you learn from someone who's a different sex than you? God has placed a whole lot of people in our lives for the purpose of helping us become who He wants us to be. Are you willing to humble yourself and learn from those people? Eugene Peterson says that the ones that we can often learn from the most are the marginals of society. And I agree with that. I want to close with a story this morning and try to bring this all together. As we're thinking about the idea of putting down the fact that, or the idea that I am the standard. Because a lot of times we walk through life like that. And the way that we've been taught, the way that we have come to our particular belief or beliefs is the standard. It is the way to do things. As most of you know, I grew up in Munford, Alabama, which is just about 15 or 20 minutes south of Anniston, Alabama. In the 60s, Anniston became, I guess, noted, and now if you look back in history, there are tons of information about this particular incident in history as part of the Civil Rights Movement. There were these guys and girls who would get on buses and they would ride into the South and they would refuse to give up their seats. They were called the Freedom Riders. And they would start in the north and they were going all the way to New Orleans. And one of those stops was going to be in Anniston, Alabama at the Greyhound station. I know exactly where it is. So they intercepted this bus, the people who were there. There was this group called the White Citizens Council of Anniston, Alabama. I know people who were in that group, knew some of them very well growing up. And their whole idea was, of course, to maintain a segregated society. So they caught this bus. They found out the schedule and what time they were going to be arriving and all that. So a ton of these people went to the bus station there in Anniston, Alabama, and they surrounded this bus. And they started throwing things at the bus and rocking the bus. And you know, the bus driver is just there in the middle of this thing. He's just an employee of the company, but they have the Freedom Riders on there. So all he knows to do is, hey, we're in terrible danger here, so I got to get out of here. So he cranks the bus and starts to pull out of the parking lot, starts to leave that situation. And when he does that, they throw things out in front of the tires and cut the tires. So this guy's driving the bus and the tires are cut and he drives it as far as he can, just a little bit up Highway 202 there in Anniston, Alabama. And the bus can't go any further. I mean, it's done all that they can do. So they pull it over, he pulls it over. When he does, you got this mob following him who had been at the bus station there. And they get around the bus and they start throwing rocks and hitting it with a bat and all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they knock out the back window with a chain and they throw a firebomb into the bus. Now you got human beings on this bus. All of a sudden, they're left with a choice. Either I get off of this bus and I face this mob or I burn to death. So these people start jumping out of the bus, out the front door, out the back door. Guess what they're met with on the outside? Baseball bats, chains, they're being beaten. They almost died because of the inhalation of the smoke. And they're there in front of this little house. And I knew all of this from history, but there's one thing that I learned on our trip just a couple of weeks ago. We were at the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, and I saw this little picture of this girl named Jamie Forsyth. This is her right here. Jamie was 12 years old. I know her dad. He ran a store there in Anniston for a long time. The bus stopped right in front of her house. She saw all these people coming off, and all she knew was that people were suffering, that they were coughing, they were not able to get their breath. These people might die. So she ran in her house and got a bucket of water and some cups and came back out and started to give those people drinks of water. Now think on this for just a moment. Jamie is a white girl, as you can see, and the majority of these people on this bus were black. And in that time, in that society, this is a very dangerous thing to do. As a matter of fact, to give you a little bit more history, the Klan, the KKK, met following this and decided whether or not they were going to punish her family for her doing this. And then they decided she was only 12 years old and that she didn't really know any better, so therefore they wouldn't punish the family. Now think about how backwards this stuff is. My point is, you see a young girl who at 12 years old obviously had not been taught any of this stuff. Who all that she saw before her was humanity, and humanity's suffering, and they are different from me. I'm here in society, and they are there, but what did she do? She went in and she got water, and she went and did what she could to meet the need that was there before her. So much like Jesus. So much like him picking up a basin of water and walking around and washing the feet of the people whom one of would betray him, one who would be the one that led the mob to him to take him to the cross. What I'm saying to us this morning is this. We see hate and love in this world. What does this all come down to? The idea of pride. It's entitlement. It's that I'm a little bit better than you. I deserve a little bit more than you do. You're black. I'm white. I'm up here. You're poor, I'm rich, I'm middle class, I'm up here. You are conservative, I'm liberal. You see what I'm saying? It's always the idea of me being a little bit better than you, me being entitled, and me having the right to put you in your place. But when we look at love defeating hate, and we look and see that we are recipients of grace, the message that I see over and over and over again for us to get over pride is for us to assume that everyone around us is better than us. To assume that those who are around us are in need of some type of service. For us to pick up our basin, for us to pick up our towel, for us to do what we can in any situation and wash the feet of the people who are around us. If we will see others as better than us, if we will see how we can serve in any situation we find ourselves in, we'll go a long way toward overcoming sin and pride. I don't know where you are in your walk this morning. Maybe you need prayer. We'll have our prayer partners in the back. I'll be in the front. Maybe you haven't started your relationship with Jesus. It's not as difficult as a whole lot of people make it. He loves you. He wants to be in a relationship with you. You're not going to be made perfect overnight, although you will be made without sin overnight. We'll love you, surround you, help you in your walk. I guarantee you that about this church. So if you haven't started a walk with Jesus, let us do what we can to help you understand the gospel and help you understand your need to be baptized. If we can help you in any way whatsoever, please come on, stand.